therapy. So for me, it took a supportive role, and then later on, I was able to channel it creatively. But in early years, it was definitely very therapeutic and supportive for me.
Yeah. Well, it's great how God uses a passion and therapy, and now you're able to have both of those at the same time. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
awesome.
it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Um, so you have been very brave with publicly announcing your faith as well as your sexual orientation, which I applaud so much. It's not easy from what I hear, and so I applaud you so much. I wanted to ask what your experience was like growing up in a Christian church as a gay man.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. I would say my life was not that bad at all, in externally speaking, um, because I didn't. No one knew, and if you keep it hush hush or you keep it secret, then it's a lot easier than if you're out with it. Because the moment you're out with it, I grew up in through the 2000s. I'm not sure if you're very familiar with like the ex-gay movement, or those practices that they were using. Those were very, very harmful practices that they were using on people, to brainwash them, to change them, and different things like that. So much to the point where, well, they got shut down, right, in
Yeah.
2013, 2014. And so, I had heard of things like this, but the last thing that I wanted was to be a problem. Um, I'm an Enneagram 9 for those of you who follow it, and so nines want peace.
Paula.
So I'm a peacemaker, and that meant, doing whatever I needed to do to the detriment, even sometimes, of maybe my own well-being or mental well-being. I need to keep things quiet. And so, honestly, growing up in the conservative, evangelical world as a gay person wasn't difficult for me. It really wasn't. And I had wonderful people there that I love to this day, that I would reach out to and give hugs and love on. They loved me. That being said, this type of issue was black and white. There was no space, right? There was no coexisting that orientation or any LGBTQ orientation with faith, and so that part made it difficult because at my core, I knew God was not against me, and yet the things that I was hearing or the things that I was told, or there was a sermon perhaps of Sodom and Gomorrah that would undoubtedly, of course, go to this was God's judgment on homosexuality, which, by the way, wasn't even in biblical texts until the mid 1900s. So it's a lot of stuff, like that was difficult to deal with. That being said, I was really good, Biffy, at telling lies too. I gave people the answers that they wanted because I thought it would protect them and protect me at the same time. So, you know, aside from the mental, physiological things that I was dealing with externally, I enjoyed my church life. I enjoyed singing in the choir. I enjoyed, going to youth group. I enjoyed even being a youth leader later on. I actually got the wonderful gift and privilege of being a youth leader to teens. I love teens. I love to this day. There's such a wonderful age group that I feel can sometimes get overshadowed, and more attention is spent marketing to them than loving them. So for me, that's just one of my hearts. But even then I lied. Even then I kept this identity, more secretive. And since then, I've come to find that there's a joy, there's a great beauty in showing this aspect of God's design and how all of humanity works together, for His benefit, and so God's benefit. And so I don't know if that answers your question, if I went a little bit off the wall on that one, but no, growing up in an evangelical church was easier than it would have been for most because I wasn't out. So
Mm-hmm.
if that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And go out as much as you want. Um, My
Okay.
policy is
Okay.
just be an open book. So,
Okay. All right. I love
um,
the question zone. Like as they're coming, just throw them at me. So.
awesome. Yeah, I really love that you talked about um, just it's such a beautiful experience, church, because I'm from an evangelical background too, and I find so much love and comfort when I think about my upbringing and everything. But I feel like I'm in a similar place with a lot of other people in this Christian type of circle where they've been feeling very burnt out with systematic issues of the church. And I
Mhm.
think we're seeing a lot of results of doubt, depression, anger, and
Mhm.
uncertainty. And there's not a way for people to um, wrestle with that and figure it out in a good way. And
Right.
so some people have taken a path of doing a deconstruction of their faith, which is a very
Right.
complicated process. It's literally
Yeah.
taking your foundation and I think zooming in brick by brick on
Mhm.
everything you want to keep, everything you want to tear down. And so
Right.
I was wondering, did you go through a deconstruction process and what did that
Mhm.
process look like for you?
Wow. I did. I did go through deconstruction. It's so funny when you talk about faith and you talk about God. At least from where my background was, but I think this is generally overarching about most denominations. But you're encouraged so often to have the right answer, right? Even we in a first world nation, we're encouraged to get it right or to guess. If you have a multiple choice question, well, just guess and maybe you'll hit the right answer. Like it's always aimed at the right answer. But the more that I've found, and even as I grow, things aren't that simple. Faith is certainly very complicated, and as much as I want to say that I always had the right answers, I don't think I did. But then again, historically, the church has had a pattern of believing they had the right answers and then finding out that they didn't. So much to the point that the church, I don't know if you're aware, but at one point in history, the church actually believed that the sun rotated around the earth. That was core to their Christian principles. Now we of course find that is of course not the truth, right? The earth revolves around the sun, but this was one of those moments. It was earth shaking. I went through a really serious deconstruction of faith, where, and this was probably to, I would say it was probably through a year and a half ago, even as recent as, you know, even present. I would say I'm in building mode now, but the deconstruction phase had to happen because I had believed for so long in a particular way that it was hard for me to reconcile. I felt like I was hurting God somehow in the process, which is a scary, terrible place to be, at least for me, because I love God. And so it was a very hard thing to ask those questions and say, is this truly what you intend, God, or is there something different? Um, and I would say, I never truly felt safe to ask those tough questions because I didn't want to undermine God's authority. But in a way, it was almost like God prompting me to be like, ask the question, ask the questions. It's like keep going, keep coming. It's like a call, basically, right? And so the destruction process looked a lot like tears. I spent a lot of nights crying. I spent a lot of moments where I didn't want the Christianese sayings to me, about like things will get better, you'll get better, or if you just pray it away, then God will answer it. Well, you have to. One of the hardest parts for me was even in being gay and that whole deconstruction process was I prayed so many times to be set free, right, from this thing. And it's funny. The scripture says that if you pray anything in His name, that He will answer it, and if it's His will. And so I thought, well, if this is a sin, then it's not God's will that we should sin, right? So clearly, the logical explanation would be that He relieves you of that it's not, that it's not yours to bear anymore. but that never happened. And so what it pushed me to was thinking, okay, well then maybe I'm praying wrong. Maybe this isn't that maybe that's not the prayer I should be praying. And so that was really one of the first moments that started that deconstruction phase of uninstalling the software that was there in my brain and cleaning it out so that I could reinstall new software, like get that upgrade, right? And that's what started to happen. And in the process of about 6 to 8 months, I went and studied this subject. I studied what does being gay look like and why does the church feel the way that they do on this particular subject. So I took 6 to 8 months. I took the Bible, several different translations. I took Hebrew, Greek thesauruses. I took old texts. I took whatever I could get my hands on, commentaries, and just tried to assemble a foundation for where I would actually land and live. Because I wanted something that was also going to hold true to my faith for what I truly believed and knew. But I needed some answers. I needed a reconciliation of the two, faith and orientation. Well, that deconstruction process continued. More tears, more questions. Through that process, I got a lot of answers. But I also had some things that were left unanswered. But that's okay with me because I don't believe we're meant to have all the answers anyway. What the takeaway is that I was given answers, I believe, for my own life and foundation for my own purpose to be able to move on, with hope and with strength for other people. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe that I'm here for other people. I really do. I don't think anything's accidental. So my deconstruction of faith has now led to a reconstruction, that's a lot stronger, believe it or not, than it was before. And it's really funny to say that because I'm sure there's a lot of people that may not understand that, right? They may be in the place that I was in, where it just didn't seem possible to bring those two things together. And to even say in the same sentence, you're a gay Christian, or you're a bi Christian, or you're trans, or something like that. It doesn't. There's no framework for that to exist in the world that I came from. But where I am now, it's just another piece of the beautiful mosaic that I think God is building. And so it was a long, dark road. People would say I probably looked depressed, or anxious, but it did take some of those effects. But when you push through it, and you pray along the way, change happens. Change happens. So that's kind of what it looked like for me.